going up massively. I think also as part of this IPO, there are a number of companies who want to invest in the IPO. I think Apple is one of them. There's a few others. So I think there's a lot of investor interest in the chip space right now in AI. There's certainly a huge demand. What was interesting in looking at their IPO filing is year over year, revenue has been pretty flat. But I think their expectation, and I think Bloomberg reported this, that there is an expectation that in the next year, we're already into that because they just reported in March for fiscal 2023. But for the next year, they're expecting revenue to be up around 11% and then even higher than that in the year following. So I think they're anticipating a lot of demand for their chip designs. And so I think because of that, there is a lot of investor interest is based on growth for these companies, being profitable as companies, but also showing growth. And even though in the last fiscal year they haven't really shown revenue growth, I think there is expectation that they will going forward. Nonetheless, this price is still, many are still saying it's a rich price.
How are you thinking about China's exposure, ARM's exposure to China? As we reported last month, ARM runs most of its China business through an independent unit called ARM Technology, which is its single largest customer, and accounted for about 24% of its sales in the year ended March. Does that raise any flags for you? And this is, to be fair, Apple gets about 20% of its revenue each year from the greater China area. But I'm wondering how you think about that as an analyst.
Yeah, I think there's so much demand for chips globally. China is a very, very big market. They've been investing in this space in order to create more independence. So I'm not quite sure what the outlook is for China, but certainly the demand globally is so big, and China is a very big market, but they are seeking to create some independence, although the Chinese market at this point is behind.
What if this IPO tomorrow doesn't go that well? I remember the Facebook experience back in 2012. Would it say something about AI? Would it say something about the IPO market? Speculate a little bit for us.
Yeah. I think it will definitely say something about both of those, about the AI market specifically and about the IPO market. I think in going through this process and looking at these companies like Instacart, Instacart is coming in way below even its internal valuation set recently. I think ARM has been very careful. We know that SoftBank bought its own shares at a $64 billion valuation just a month ago, and they're coming in, almost $10 billion below that amount. So I think there is a lot of sensitivity in the market right now around pricing, partly because of how badly tech stocks have performed in the last 2 years. But I also think because for many of these investors in Instacart and in ARM and in Klaviyo, it's not really just about these three companies, it's the opening up of the market, and it's the 10, 50, 100, some even say 200 companies who are looking at listing and were thinking about listing in 2021 and missed the mark. There might not be quite that many who could go out in this market or into 2024. But for many of those investors, it's about these companies that are going to be going out after these IPOs, and they don't want to price this too high and have that impact the markets. And interestingly, I spoke to a lawyer who worked on the Facebook IPO in 2012. There was so much anticipation around the Facebook IPO. It was priced at the highest level that it could, and the stock came down. After it went public, the stock came down and kind of dampened the whole IPO market because it was such a big listing for about 9 months after that. And so I think given this is one of the biggest listings, certainly since 2021, when Rivian went public, I think investors are focused on ARM, but they're also focused on the next set of companies to come out and do not want this stock to collapse.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting you bring up Meta, Facebook, now known as Meta Platforms, and Rivian, companies that have performed in completely different ways after hitting the public market. Facebook's early problems notwithstanding. So I want to take a step back and just in the last 90 seconds we have with you, Janae, talk about a completely different stage of a company, and that's, of course, venture capital, way before the founders were even thinking about an IPO. You do a lot of analysis on the state of venture capital. Where are things right now in terms of fundraising and in terms of availability of funds?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a huge pullback in the venture capital markets in 2022 from the second quarter and into 2023. And if you look back 2020, there was north of 300 billion globally that went into private venture-backed companies from seed all the way through to late stage. In 2021, that doubled. It was north of 600 billion. And what we're seeing possibly for this year in the pullback, it's going to be half of that. It'll be less than 300 billion again. And I think the late stage market has largely evaporated, and that's because of the IPO market. So there aren't companies on a pipeline to go public. All of that money went in at the very late stage in anticipation of companies going public, and that did not happen. And so that massively pulled back, but ended up affecting actually every single stage pulled back as a result.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and you point out that a lot of these companies have brought down their valuations here in this final stage. Janae here, Senior Data Editor at Crunchbase, thank you so much for your insight on this really momentous and interesting IPO coming out tomorrow.
Well, let's go check on the latest world of national news. Nancy Lyons is in the 90 newsroom in Washington, D.C. Hey, Nancy.
Thanks, Ken. This afternoon, United Auto Workers President Sean Fain plans to outline the union's strike strategy if the new contract with the big three automakers is not reached by tomorrow's midnight deadline. Bloomberg's Detroit Bureau Chief David Welch is following negotiations.
He said they're so far apart. Pay is probably the big issue. I know the auto companies don't want to give in on reinstating pensions either. But Fain was talking about strike strategy, and that he would maybe not strike everybody, but strategically strike certain plants. That would save money in the strike fund while doing some financial damage to the companies.
Bloomberg's Detroit Bureau Chief David Welch, the Biden administration is urging both sides to stay at the bargaining table 24/7. It took nearly 2 weeks, but Pennsylvania authorities say they have recaptured an escaped killer.
Authorities captured Danilo Cavalcante Wednesday morning after he spent 2 weeks on the run, evading hundreds of searchers. Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens says Cavalcante's heat signal was picked up by an aircraft overnight, marking the beginning of his end as a fugitive.
Tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise.
Bivens says Cavalcante was armed when he tried to escape by crawling through thick brush and continued resisting as he was taken into custody. No shots were fired. Steve Rappaport, Bloomberg Radio.
Lee remains a hurricane and is moving north in the Atlantic. John Cangelosi is a hurricane specialist with the National Hurricane Center and says the storm could still impact portions of the eastern seaboard.
If you have interest or you live in coastal New England, generally from southeastern Massachusetts up through Maine, you got to keep an eye on this one.
Cangelosi says the storm will likely turn into a nor'easter-type storm by the weekend. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Nancy Lyons.
You know our voices. Now see our faces.
Is this a crowning achievement?
Your favorite Bloomberg radio shows are now live on YouTube. John, are we surprised?
No, we're not surprised.
Watch us all day for market news, conversation, and insight.
Lots of undercurrents in terms of eco data.
From Bloomberg surveillance and markets to Sound On and Business Week.
We've got a rally in stocks. We've got yields backing off.
Bloomberg Radio. Watch us all day live on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Global News. Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Dear Calvary Hospital, when my mother's Alzheimer's was untreatable by ordinary hospitals, we brought her to the world's best palliative care hospital and hospice, Calvary. The transformation was breathtaking. From a dreary, depressing atmosphere to an enlightened, immaculate setting, Calvary staff uplifted Mom's spirit, as well as our families, with love, tenderness, and care that I had never seen before. She was given the dignity and respect she deserved. I know that care like this just doesn't happen. As an MBA graduate, Calvary should be a Harvard University case study on how an organization can manage and deliver on its mission with unparalleled success. I am now an apostle of Calvary. Tony Guerrero.
This is Frank Calamari for Calvary Hospital. Please visit calvaryhospital.org or call 718-518-2000. Calvary Hospital, for 125 years, where life continues.
Hi, this is Russell Shinsky, Managing Partner of Anshin Accountants and Advisors. In light of ongoing challenges this year, have you considered if your advisor is the right fit for your business? Are you getting the attention and responsiveness you need? Given the changing marketplace, you need established advisors who help find opportunities in the current business and tax environment. Anshin's Accountants and Advisors provide the resources and guidance that you and your business need to meet today's challenges. Visit anshin.com to contact us.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, Tom Porcelli, Chief U.S. Economist, PGIM.
Here's the problem for the backdrop with regard to wages, which, look, in real terms, I think we'll appreciate are sort of performing decently. The challenge, though, is if you have real revenue that's moving sideways, right, which it is, and you have, which obviously is a function of the consumer that is sort of slowing down to some extent. How do companies respond to that? How do companies respond to real revenue moving sideways, wage pressures firming up a bit in real terms? I think that, to me, that's a perfect recipe for companies to go after labor, particularly if it means you're going to get a margin compression, which is something that we've been talking about for a while, and I think, Lisa, you and I talked about that last time I was on. That, to me, is a challenge as it relates to sort of the labor dynamic in the United States.
To translate this,
yeah,
they're going to be layoffs. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
is that if you see this incredible margin compression, if you see costs going up,
yep,
and you see consumers pushing back on prices,
yep,
the next step is people are going to lose their jobs. How much pushback is there actually to pricing if we're still seeing robust services side inflation, as this report just suggested?
Yeah, so and what we know is that wage pressures, again, remaining firm in real terms, but it's coming in the context of inflationary pressure that's now slowing down. I mean, this 2/10 that we got, I get it, firmer than expectation, but that still doesn't change the trend. The trend of inflation is actually moving slower. So that means that the pass-through is becoming much more difficult for companies.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long at Bloomberg. Arm holding, preparing to price its shares at $52 apiece. This, according to the Wall Street Journal. Turned out to be a mixed day on Wall Street today. We had the Dow Jones Industrial Average declining by 70 points, down by 0.2%. S&P up 5, that was a gain of 0.1%, while the Nasdaq Composite Index advanced 40 points today. Nasdaq was up by about 0.3%. 10-year yield 4.25%, with a 2-year yielding 4.97%. Spot gold down $5 the ounce to 1908, drop there of 0.3%. And West Texas Intermediate crude, little change, 88.85 for a barrel of WTI, up today by 1 cent. So a mixed Wednesday here, a CPI Wednesday. What then is ahead for the U.S. stock market? That question today for Amanda Agati, Chief Investment Officer at PNC Asset Management, who was a guest right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
I think the market's just going to continue to be a little choppy, if not range-bound, until we can get a little bit of clarity on some of the trajectories, key data points to tell us whether we're heading for that soft landing or we're just going to power right through that no landing scenario.
And you can hear more of the conversation on the Bloomberg Business Week podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. Citigroup shares advanced today, up by 1.7%. Citigroup preparing for a wave of job cuts as CEO chain Fraser restructures the Wall Street giant to operate from 5 main businesses. Recapping stocks mix today, S&P down up 5 points, up 0.1%. It was the Dow that was down 70 points, down 0.2%. Nasdaq higher by 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Really appreciate it. Well, a few months ago, my brother sent me a TikTok. It just blew my mind. It was a demonstration of someone using Photoshop. I mean, okay, like that sounds, why would I watch a TikTok of someone using Photoshop? Well, it started with a picture of a locker room